Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Abner Brijesh. Thank you, sorry. And he is a champion speedcuber. And he is also a solver of puzzles. Today, he's going to introduce us to a variety of puzzles through demonstrations, stories from competitions, and insight into this welcoming community. So please help me welcome champion speedcuber Abner.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining me today, and the crew at AADL, thank you guys very much, especially tech crew in the back. As Pete said, I've been a champion speedcuber for a couple of years now. I started cubing about 10 years ago. I'll give you guys a more in-depth rundown of my background just so that you don't feel like you're being talked to by a stranger. But yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. I do have a Q&A section at the very end of the presentation, but at any time during the presentation, if you do have any questions, feel free to just raise your hand, and I'll try to answer you as best I can in the moment. All right, cool. So first of all, I should ask, how many people know how to solve a Rubik's Cube in here? All right, quite a bit. Very nice, quite a bit. Cool, cool. How many people don't but want to learn at some point? All right, all the parents. Very nice. My mom's the same way. Okay. I do want to be clear, though. This is not exactly a presentation on how to solve the cube. It's more about understanding the community and the competition scene and things like that. But if you do have any questions about solving, I'd be happy to discuss after the presentation. And I also have some flyers for my coaching lessons over here if you're interested in that. That's also what the QR code at the top of the screen is for. So here's the basic agenda of what we're going to be doing today. Like I said, I'll talk a bit about my own cubing career, some basic facts, types of cubes, competitions, demonstrations, learning resources, and like I said at the end, a Q&A. So a little bit about myself. You see some of the achievements on the side. I'm a 27-time medal winner, gold, bronze, silver. My first one was back in 2017. That was in Pyraminx at a competition in Virginia. And since then, I've had 2 more in Pyraminx and several in the blindfolded events. And later on today, I'll try to do a demonstration for a blindfolded solve. I can't guarantee a success. Nobody can, but hopefully it goes well, and it'll be pretty cool. I'm originally from New Jersey, where I held 13 state records, mostly again in the blindfolded events, 4x4 blindfolded, 5x5 blindfolded, and multi-blind, and also 3x3 blindfolded mean of 3 at one point. There I also won 2 New Jersey championships, one in 5x5 blindfolded and one in multi-blind. That was in 2024. I've been teaching for, I believe, 8 years now. This is going to be my 8th year. So over the course of that time, I've taught 100+ students through private lessons, through summer camps, seminars, all those kinds of things. So I've been doing this presentation probably longer than some of you have been alive. So. And last thing is 35+ competitions attended. So as it says over there, I'm a 10-year veteran. My first competition was May 21st, 2016. So pretty much, I mean, today it's exactly 9 years and 7 months. In 3 months, it'll be my 10-year anniversary. I went to my first competition when I was 9 years old. So I still have plenty of great memories from that time. Very successful competition. Someone even set a world record while I was there, so pretty awesome experience. And I recommend that all of you, at some point, try to go to a competition if you haven't already. And I'll talk more about that a little later. Like I mentioned, I am a blindfolded specialist, 13 state records, 2 championships, and a semi-official world record. I say semi-official because it is based on actual in-competition results, though the metric is a specific metric that is not tracked on the website. It's more of an unofficial metric using real statistics, in-competition statistics. And like I mentioned, I've been a coach for 10 years, sorry, not 10 years, 8 years. Started back in 2018, doing private lessons, seminars like this, workshops, open houses at various local businesses, all sorts of things. Also put out a Udemy course a couple years ago. So kind of taught in various capacities. And outside of cubing, I'm currently a student at the University of Michigan, studying economics and saxophone. All right, so now to some Rubik's Cube facts. It was invented in 1974 by Abner Rubik. He was a Hungarian professor, engineering professor, and it was invented because he wanted to create a sort of experiment for his students. He wanted to see if he could make a device where the pieces could move independently of each other, but they all stay together at once. So it didn't actually have any colors initially. It was just a big block that could be turned. just to sort of experiment. And then he realized later on that if you put some colors on it, it would be an actual puzzle. And he himself wasn't actually able to solve it for a couple of months. So he did come out with a book. I can't remember the name of it, but so he wrote the book on the cube. A couple of years ago it came out. I highly recommend reading it if you're interested in it. It's a great read. It did used to be called the Magic Cube. Some people still call it that. 8 years later, we had the first world championship. It was won by a solver called Minh Tai. He was 16 years old when he won. He was a Vietnamese-American high schooler from LA. And the winning time was 22.95 seconds, which nowadays does not sound that fast when you compare it to the top solvers of today, especially since we just had a new 3x3 single world record, which was like 2 seconds. So compared to 22.95 seconds, it's quite a big difference. But back then, it was quite unbelievable. And the funny thing is, Minh Tai has not competed since. He's done 3 solves in the World Cube Association. He's a former world champion, former world record holder, and he has not done anything official since. So, and this is my favorite fact. There are 43 quintillion, 252 quadrillion, 3,274,489,000. Sorry, I missed a number somewhere in there. 3,274,489,865,000 possible combinations of the cube. In my calculus class 2 years ago, I did a derivation of that number, so it's quite interesting. It has to do a bunch with factorials and permutations and combinations and all sorts of things. But what's even more interesting is that despite that astronomical number, the cube can always be solved in 20 moves or less. And there is actually an event in the World Cube Association, which is the organization that organizes all these competitions, where the entire goal of the event is to figure out the lowest possible move count solution to any given scramble. It's called Fewest Moves Challenge. You basically get 1 hour, and using a variety of complex techniques, not the standard techniques, just very mathematically advanced techniques, you try to see if you can get it under 20. So I believe right now the world record is something like 16 moves. So yes, humans are able to figure out how to do it in 20 moves or less for certain scrambles. Computers will always be able to do it in 20 moves or less. And finally, it is the best-selling toy of all time. So some people don't consider it a toy, but it is, it is a toy. But what we do is still quite serious. So. All right, so now we'll talk about just some of the types of cubes. Since many of you already are part of the scene, you may know a bunch of these things, but I'm still going to go ahead and try to give you a demonstration of each one. So starting with the World Cube Association events on the side here, and I'll try to switch to the document camera so we can see. But we have the standard 2x2. Right, this is probably the one that many of you started with, if not the standard 3x3. When I teach private lessons, I usually start with this one because it builds a nice foundation for 3x3. You learn corner solving techniques, orientation techniques for white layer, yellow layer. So it's very useful when we move on to 3x3 because you already have a good foundation. So first time I ever solved one of these was by accident. In 2014, I was at a Rubik's Cube convention at the Liberty Science Center in New Jersey. I bought my first 2x2, and I was just kind of messing around with it for a couple of hours, and eventually it got solved. So, next is the standard 3x3. This is the one that many of you are aware of. For many of you, your first cube, I mean, nowadays it was a speed cube, but more than 10 years ago when I started, it was a regular Rubik's brand. Now nobody buys Rubik's brands because they're terrible. But yeah, they were the ones who started everything, so we still have to put some respect on their name. So this is the, of course, proper 3x3. Next we have the 4x4, one level above the 3x3. Rubik's calls this the Rubik's Master. This introduces the additional challenge of something called parity, where you can have situations that do not exist on 3x3 because of the even layer nature. So stuff like this, where only 2 edges on the cube are mixed up. Then we have 5x5, one level above that. This is personally one of my favorites. And 4x4, 5x5 are the only 2 big cubes, big meaning bigger than 3x3, that have a blindfolded event attached to them in competitions. Next is 6x6. Right, this is one of my least favorites just because the hardware is not as good, and that has to do with the mechanics of building an even layered puzzle. You basically have to hide an additional 7th layer inside of the cube, and that causes some instability that's prone for popping and breaking, and it's until fairly recently the hardware was not very good at all. So not one of my personal favorites. And finally, 7 by 7. This is the highest order n by n puzzle, n by n meaning variable by variable, in the WCA. So we don't have 8 by 8, 9 by 9 in the WCA. Those cubes do exist. And I saw someone here had like a 13 by 13 or something like that earlier. What is it? Is it an 11 by 11, 13 by 13? What is it? All right. You want to show everybody? You want to come up here and put it under the document camera? Yeah, look at that thing. It's a behemoth. Why don't you come up here? We can put it over here. Yeah, quite big. Look at that. It's a beast.
Solved this much so far.
That's pretty good. 2 centers, not bad. Very good. Yeah. The good thing about such cubes is that I once heard a famous cuber say, once you solve up to 5 by 5, you can kind of solve anything, which is true in a way. I like to say once you go up to 6 by 6, because then you know how to handle certain advanced techniques. But once you solve the 6 by 6, you can solve anything. So I never owned an 8 by 8. The highest cube I own is a 9 by 9. I've solved that a few times, but if you can do such a thing, you can go up any level. I mean, now the highest order mass-produced puzzle, I believe, is a 21 by 21. It's about $1,500, so you can either choose to pay your rent or you can buy a 21 by 21. Maybe one day I'll get one of those, but not in the near future. Right, so after 7 by 7, we have Megaminx. This is a 12-sided puzzle. So I believe the world record for this now is approaching about 20 seconds. When I was solving, it was primarily a Peruvian solver called Juan Pablo Huanqui, who was the greatest Megaminx solver in the world at the time. Actually, at my first competition, the world record for Megaminx single, the way competitions work is you have single times and average times. Single times are 1 solve. Average times, for the most part, you do 5 solve, remove the worst, remove the best, take the mean of the middle 3. That metric is called average, and again, the single is single. So at my first competition, a solver called Nicholas Nang broke the Megaminx single world record. So I never saw it in person, but I read about it afterwards. Right, after Megaminx, we have the Pyraminx. I see some of you have the Pyraminx. Yeah, 2 of you guys have the Pyraminx right here. So this is the triangular shaped puzzle. This is probably the second easiest after the 2 by 2. This was also my main event for quite some time. Like I mentioned, my first medal was in Pyraminx. My second medal was in Pyraminx. And I had one more after that as well. Next, we have Square 1. Right here, this is quite a weird puzzle. It is a shapeshifter, right? So it does change out of a cube shape with just a few turns. When you get a scramble like this for a competition, the first step would be to make it into a cube again. And at Nationals 2018, some of you who are active on YouTube may know this solver. His name is Daniel Karnock. On YouTube, he goes by DerpyCuber. He's not as popular nowadays, but when I was younger, 10 years ago, it makes me feel old, but he was one of the primary solvers in the world at the time. He is a former North American record average holder for Square 1 and also a former world record holder for Square 1. At Nationals 2018, he broke the world record single, and I remember it very clearly because I was standing pretty much right in front of him as he was solving it. So the whole room, I mean, you can imagine, it's like a convention center, so the whole room erupted, and it was awesome. So I believe he is now studying jazz piano at Oberlin. So also a very talented, creative person. Next, we have Clock. This is the only non-twisty puzzle out of the 17 WCA events. So this is what it looks like right here. Basically, it works by putting a pin up, you turn the dials, and the goal of this event is to get all of the individual clocks facing to 12. That says 12, I don't know if you can see that, but the idea is to get all these clocks on both sides facing to 12. This was the very last event that I was able to achieve an average in, only because it's not at very many competitions, so you kind of have to get lucky with being able to go to a competition which actually has it. Right, and the final shape modification for the World Cube Association is this cube. I usually teach this cube 4th in my sequence. It goes 2 by 2 Pyraminx, 3 by 3 cube. And one unique feature about this cube is that you can have situations like this, where normally opposite centers that aren't supposed to be able to become next to each other can indeed get next to each other. And that happens just because of the nature of how this cube turns. You would never experience that on an n by n, so 3 by 3, 2 by 2, 4 by 4, whatever. Or rather, odd n by n. And I have some pictures of the cubes here that I do not have with me. So this is an 8 by 8. Oh, sorry. This is an 8 by 8. This is a 9 by 9, 10 by 10, 11 by 11, 13 by 13. Nowadays, they make 12 by 12s. They did not have 12 by 12s when this presentation was originally made, just because making even layer cubes that high up was an engineering difficulty. As I mentioned before, you kind of have to hide a layer, and that causes some problems with the actual mechanics of building it. Yeah?
What, is it the mechanics underneath that require, as you get bigger, that the outside bands be wider than the inside pieces?
Yeah, so the question was, is it the engineering that kind of requires the outside bands to become thicker as you get higher and higher? Yes, back in the day, what would happen is, just for stability purposes, the outside layers needed to be larger. For all of these cubes, the way you solve them is by doing a reduction method. So, guys, can you see my mouse? Okay, you can't see my mouse. I'll just do it over here. So all these inner layers you see here, and what's your name? Everett? Okay, so Everett showed us before on the 13 by 13 how when he's solving it, you mind if I just take it and put it onto the document camera again?
Yes.
Thank you. So he showed us how when he was solving it, he started off by building this massive center, right? So the reduction method works by basically reducing this behemoth down into a 3 by 3. So you start by creating the centers, as Everett has done. Then you would solve these massive edges. And after all that is done, you do 3 by 3 stage. So then that's when you use these outer layers to just solve it like a 3 by 3. So because these outer layers are thicker, you can actually turn a bit faster once you get to that point. Until that point, you're turning multiple layers at a time, so it's okay if the inner layers are thinner. So it's more of a stability thing than anything else. Great question, thank you. And thank you, Everett, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And they used to have this thicker outer layer thing for 7 by 7 and 6 by 6 as well. You can kind of see it, sorry. You can kind of see it on my 7 by 7 as well. Primarily a stability thing. So yes, 13 by 13. This was the first mass-produced 13 by 13, the Moyu 13 by 13. It's no longer in production, so if you wanted to buy it, you'd have to buy it secondhand. But yeah, this was the largest cube you could buy on the market for a long time. It cost about $300. This is the 15 by 15. This was kind of the second largest for, sorry, in the order of the largest cubes, this was the next one. Like I said, now they have 12 by 12s and 14 by 14s because the engineering has gotten better. They can hide that extra inner layer quite well. And then we have some shape modifications. And now the largest mass-produced puzzle you can buy is a 21 by 21, like I said. It's about $1,500. This is called the Ready Cube. I just have some shape modifications here just to show the variety of puzzles. This is called the Ready Cube. Came out probably 7 or 8 years ago, something like that. Corner twisting puzzle. This is called the Fisher Cube. There is a British puzzle manufacturer and modifier called Tony Fisher. He was known on YouTube quite a while back. I don't know how active he is now, but he was known for basically taking standard 3x3s and working on them to create all these different shape mods. So this is his most famous creation, probably the most famous 3x3 modification. So it's just named after him. It's called the Fisher Cube. I do have one of these back in New Jersey, but I only brought my mains with me to Michigan, so I don't have the physical thing to show you. This is the mirror blocks. I did see someone had a mirror blocks. Are they still here? Yeah, mirror blocks. Cool. You've got all the puzzles.
Almost all of them right there.
Can I put it under the document camera?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome,
But
thank
it's
you.
not that good turn.
That's all right, that's all right. Most these cubes generally aren't that great turning anyway. So this is the mirror blocks. You'll notice that it does kind of shapeshift as you turn. So the way this cube is solved is not by looking at any particular color, although I do have a mirror cube with different colors, which kind of defeats the purpose. But the way this cube is solved is by feeling the actual pieces and kind of figuring out where they go based on shape. Company GAN, they're probably the top manufacturing company right now. They recently as in like 2 years ago, came out with a mirror blocks, and that's probably the best one you can buy on the market. Although this cube is basically just for fun. You can't compete in it, although many people have been pushing for it to be considered in competition. It's just something you would solve for fun. This is called a void cube. Obviously, it's missing something. It is missing its centers. I still don't know exactly how it's staying together when you turn it. But this has an interesting issue in that because there are no centers, you can actually run into similar problems that you would on 4x4 that are not ever going to happen on a standard 3x3. So some extra difficulties with that. It's not just a 3x3 with no centers. This is called the Ghost Cube, one of the craziest looking cubes on this list. This is a 3x3 Ghost Cube. They do make, I've seen 6x6 Ghost Cubes. I think they've even made an 11x11 Ghost Cube. I don't know how anybody is solving that. But yeah, this is basically like a mirror blocks on steroids. You have shapes as opposed to colors, and you have to solve it based on that. This is the Rubik's Magic. This, I think, stopped being a WCA event even before I was born. So I highly doubt that any of you have even heard of this thing. So, oh, you have? Pretty cool. This is, again, this is not, sorry? Were you going to say something?
I think I have one, but it's like a rectangle one.
Oh, okay. So then that's actually a scrambled Rubik's Magic. The scrambled Rubik's Magic, it looks like a rectangle. Basically, these 3 rings you see here, instead of interlocking, they're just in a row. And you solve it by just getting it into this format. The reason it was taken out of the WCA, World Cube Association, was because it only has one scrambled position. So there's no real challenge to solving it. As long as you memorize the exact movements to get it back into this position, you know how to solve it. And so, 3x3, yes, you just scramble it and solve it, but each solve is different because, like I said, there's over 43 quintillion possible combinations. It's very likely that you will never get the same scramble twice. In Magic, it's literally the same scramble every single time. So it was just who could do the movement the fastest. And so they felt that was kind of ridiculous, and so they removed it from competition. One of the world record holders for this event before it was taken out was originally from New Jersey. So I've met him a couple of times. Pretty cool guy. He also, I think, held the world record at one point for most competitions attended, which I think he maxed out at like 372 or something like that. So pretty cool. All right, now we'll do some demonstrations. For this, I need some volunteers. Who would like to scramble for me? Awesome, lots of volunteers, lots of volunteers. Okay, why don't you do 3x3 for me?
Okay.
All right, you want to do 4x4? Okay. Okay, here we go. Let's do some 4x4. And who wants to do pyraminx? You want to do pyraminx? Okay, let's do pyraminx here. And I need someone to do another 3x3 for blindfolded. Let's do you over there. All right, there you go. So let's take a bit of time. And feel free to ask questions during the demonstration. Not the blindfolded one, because blindfolded one, I do need a bit more focus. Yeah?
You have one that's broken apart so we can see the engineering inside of it?
I don't have one immediately broken up right now, but I can try to show you on this one right here. That's a great question, by the way. Okay. Right, okay. So I'll kind of take this one apart as we go. These days, it's much harder to take the cubes apart, or at least the speed cubes, because they're specifically designed not to be taken apart. Unless you actually, if you pop the center cap here, you'll see a screw. This screw, if you loosen it with just any standard Phillips head screwdriver, it'll loosen up and you can actually take the pieces out. And oftentimes what cubers will do, cubers are people who solve Rubik's Cubes, what they will do is they will actually tension and lubricate these cubes to perform better. So when you initially get a cube, it's often not at its peak performance. So what I would do, what many cubers would do, we would buy these special cube lubricants, silicone-based lubricants from companies like the Cubicle, Cubicle.com, Speedcube Shop, Cube Depot USA, whatever retailer. And we would apply this lubricant to these pieces, and then start turning the cube so that it kind of, it's like a WD-40, but specifically designed for cubes. And we would tension it. Looser generally means faster, but now you have a risk of locking up because the pieces are more flexible. Tighter, and it also has a higher probability of popping because now it's all loose. It could come out at any time. Tighter cubes are generally slower, but they're much more stable and they're not going to pop no matter how fast you turn them. So Rubik's brands are generally like the tight cubes, and speed cubes are generally like the loose cubes. But yeah, if we take a look at the inner design here, and more modern cubes, I prefer old school cubes just because I cannot keep up with the hardware. It's too fast for me. I like a slower cube. So this is a more old school cube. This GAN that I have here is a much more modern cube. which has much more modern engineering. But the basic design is you have a core in the center there. That's that blue part that you see. And it's got 6 spokes connected to these center caps. And that's your core. That's basically what's considered your core. And because of the way it's designed, these centers never move. They move in the sense that, sure, it's rotating 90 degrees that way. But relative to each other, these centers never move. And that's the way all odd end-by-end puzzles are. From the core, you kind of, once you put your center caps in, you know your sides, and then you build from there. So these edges have what's called a torpedo design, basically kind of locks it in place with these corners as well. And if you wanted to do a deep clean of a puzzle, which I've sometimes done, you can actually take apart each of these pieces. These pieces are modular, so and you can see it great on a stickerless puzzle like this one. But basically each portion of the piece can be removed, and then you can clean inside. And for magnetic puzzles, this puzzle is not magnetic, but for magnetic puzzles, the magnets would be hidden inside the corner right there. So back in the day, in like back in the day, yeah, I'm so old now. But back in like 2017 or so, when magnetic puzzles were initially starting to be released, oftentimes people would have a great puzzle that did not have a magnetic version. And they would basically buy their own magnets, open up these puzzles, super glue them in there, and basically create their own magnetic puzzles. So that's how they would do it. They would open it up, put it in there, and that's how it would be done. And I would open up, a 6x6 or something and show you, but it is such a pain to put back together because there's so many internal pieces. This is fairly standard. It's just the core and all the outer pieces. As the cubes get bigger, you need pieces inside, which I can kind of show you here. You can kind of see right there that there are some internal pieces that are used to kind of create a thicker inner layer, and all the pieces surround it. And that's how the stability is created. Like I said, these cubes are now designed to not ever pop. So if you do take a piece out and it's not loosened, it's a pain to get back in. So I'll probably deal with that a bit later.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah.
So you mentioned that some of the newer cubes are too fast versus the cube that you're using.
Yeah.
What makes, how do you know what is fast and faster?
Okay, sure. Good question. So the question was so I mentioned that nowadays some of the cubes are considered a lot faster. And how do you tell what is considered too fast, what's considered just right? It is purely a personal preference thing. In my personal opinion, if a cube is too fast, what it means is that I can't control it. So for example, I'll try to show you on my GAN here. I am a little used to this one, so it may not be as clear. But if I try to turn as quickly as I can, there's right there, I don't know if you saw that, but I locked up because the pieces, when I turned, the layers were not fully aligned because I am not used to the speed of this puzzle, so I cannot turn accurately. And if I can't turn accurately, meaning if I do one turn, you can see that I overshot it there. If I do one turn, ideally I want it to match like that. And if it doesn't, now it's misaligned, chances of locking up are higher. And so because of that, I actually go slower because I need to fix the lockup. Now, there are kind of fail-safes built into these puzzles to prevent things like this, things like corner cutting. These cubes are designed where even if you have it something like this, that was not a good example, but even if it's like this, it'll still turn, right? And obviously magnets, see if I can demonstrate this, but we have magnets. You can kind of see it there, right? The magnet is pulling it to the side for increased stability. So those are kind of two things that is used to offset the speed of the cube, make it more controllable. But I have a pretty harsh touch on the cube, meaning I turn with a lot of force. So if I'm using a much looser cube, it'll overshoot and then I can't control it. I use slower cubes because I can use a good amount of force and it won't overshoot. It'll stay where it's supposed to be. So it's just my personal turning preference. All of the top solvers you'll see using these GAN cubes because they have a light enough touch where they can control it and it'll be fine. I prefer to be a little rougher, so I use a slower cube. Does that answer your question?
It does, but how do you choose what is just sort of realistic and not competition level?
Meaning how do I choose what I compete with?
Yeah.
You kind of just try a bunch of cubes, and if you have a cube that that feels nice in terms of like, oh, this is really smooth, this is really blocky, whatever your preference is, you can adjust the cube to be what you want. So if you have a cube that is too tight, it takes too much force to move it, you can loosen the cube. So I showed before how you have this screw here, right? Now if this is too tight, it's taking too much effort to finish a turn, you can loosen it, and that'll reduce the amount of force you need to apply in order to finish a turn. And then you can also do things like add lubricants, and that'll make it smoother as well. So doing that and also just experimenting with all the different cubes on the market, you will find some combination of feeling that you enjoy and also competition like capability, like how you actually perform using it.
So this one's not magnetic.
This one is not magnetic, yes. I compete with a magnetic version of this cube, which is somewhere out there right now, yeah. Does that answer your question? Cool, awesome, thank you, yeah.
So when you compete, you get to bring your own equipment
Yes, you do.
to meet the basic specs of whatever you're saying.
Exactly.
8 or whatever.
Exactly,
You
that is
bring
true.
your version thereof.
Yes, and that is required, yeah.
And they vary in size potentially, between manufacturers?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And do the different ones vary in size between manufacturers? Like a 3x3 might be bigger or smaller?
Yes, that is true. So as you did mention, you do have to bring your, the question was, do you bring your own cubes and to competitions, and do they vary by size according to manufacturer? Yes, you do bring your own cubes, because when you train at home, you're training on this specific puzzle that you potentially have set up yourself using tensioning techniques, using lubrication techniques. So if you suddenly start competing with a different cube, that might throw off your time, you know? So you do have to bring your own cube. It also helps the competition organizers organize because they don't have to supply cubes. And it can vary by size depending on manufacturer. There was a, I believe, Dutch solver called Mats Valk back in the day. He's a multi-time world record holder. Around the time I started not competing, but getting into it, solving when I was in the 3rd grade or so, he was the world record holder. At that time, his world record was 5.55 seconds. This is like 2013, 2014. And when he eventually partnered with a brand called Chi, and he created a cube called the Valk, just named after him. And the size of the cube, at that time, the size of the cube, the standard size was 56 millimeters. Before that, it was 57 millimeters, then it became 56. Mats Valk decided to have 55.5 millimeters in honor of his 5.55 world record. So, you know, just a little thing there. Then you'll also have miniature versions. Later on, Mats Valk broke another world record, and his time was 4.74. So he released the Valk Mini, which you may guess is 47.4 millimeters. So it does depend based on company. If they release a mini version, it's often quite small. People used to use it for one-handed solving, the miniature one. So yeah, back in the day it was 57 millimeters. Now it used to be 56. I think the standard now is 55.5. Because usually, like, once a super successful cube is one size, all the other companies will be, all right, well, we want people to be easily able to switch off that one to our model, so we're going to make it the same size. So yeah, of course. Yes?
Wouldn't it level the playing field if they all had to use the same cube versus their own that they've been practicing on?
It would level the playing field in the sense that the cube itself would not provide any advantages. I think you would still definitely have the same placements. Like if you went to a competition, people are all using the same cube, you would get a specific order. Like 1 through 10, these people finished 1 through 10 place. If everyone was using the same cube, I don't think that order would change, because most of the time that you get comes from the skill and not the actual cube itself. Okay. It also depends, because what is considered a good cube for one person may not be considered a good cube for another person. I prefer a cube that was released 5 years ago. A very bare bones basic puzzle. I think the retail price is like $9. Top cubers in the world right now generally prefer GAN cubes, which run upwards of $90, you know. But even if I were to learn all the algorithms that they know, I probably still would not like those cubes because I prefer a harder touch and I need a different type of cube, you know. So yeah, in that sense, maybe if it was standardized to only using GAN puzzles, I might fare a bit worse because I'm used to the harder, the cube which requires more force. But for the most part, at the top levels, you will get the same placements, just because it's like 95% cuber skill and 5% cube, you know. So yeah, of course. Yeah, over here.
Can you bring the logo of your cube to a competition?
Nice question. I really like that question. The question was, can you bring the logo of a cube to a competition? This is interesting because, I don't know, maybe you asked that because none of my cubes have logos on them. That is because in blindfolded solving, you are not allowed to have logos. And the way blind solving works, it wouldn't matter even if there was a logo. Like, it wouldn't change the times at all, just because of the way the method works. But the idea is if you can feel a physical, deformity on the cube, you know, okay, this is the white center, or whatever center the logo was on. So for that reason, for blindfolded solving, you are not allowed logos. You have to remove it. Even if it's a printed on logo, I've literally had to use salt and scratch off a logo off a cube because I wanted to use it in blind solving. So no logos allowed for blind solving. For regular events, sighted events where you can see the cube, logos are fine. They don't mind. Yeah. All right, if there are no other questions at the moment, we will start doing some of these demonstrations. Let's start with the pyraminx. You got my pyraminx? Awesome, thank you very much. All right, so I'm not going to go particularly fast. I'll kind of talk you through it as I go. Pyraminx starts with solving the tips, generally. So as you get more advanced, you solve the tips as you're solving the entire puzzle, so you don't actually add extra time. In the beginning, though, I usually teach you to solve everything at the beginning. Our next goal is to solve the yellow layer. So that is done by taking these edge pieces right here. You can see I have a yellow and green edge, so I need to get it in between the yellow and green centers. There's a couple of techniques of doing that. And then you would do that for all of these edges here. Then finally, once you have these three pieces in some configuration, you do a single algorithm to get them all solved. And just like that, that's how you do it, all right? So, thank you. Because pyraminx is quite short, I mean, if you think about it, it was really only 3 steps that I did. I solved the tips, I solved my yellow layer, and I did the final finishing algorithm. Just 3 steps. Because it's only 3 steps, you can get really, really fast on pyraminx, especially if you start combining multiple steps at once. The single world record for pyraminx is now less than a second. It's like 0.7 or something like that. My personal best time, probably like 1.2, 1.3, something like that. The world record average now is, I think, in the low ones, 1.2. I might be wrong about that. It might be closer to 1.7. But I believe it's definitely under 2 seconds by now. My personal best time for pyraminx average is, I think, 2.5 or something like that. Yeah?
How do they time you?
Good question. I don't have a specifically cubing timer with me, because like I said, I only brought my primary necessities with me. Oh, you got a timer here. Perfect. Awesome. Cool. Can I borrow this? Awesome. Great. Cool. These guys are like honorary presenters already. This is great. Okay. So this is basically how the timing works. When you go to a competition, except for the blindfolded events, which I'll explain when I do the blindfolded demonstration. For the sighted events, with the exception of FMC, which is just 1 hour, you just have to find the best solution. For all standard timed events, you get your scramble. It's covered with a cube cover. You come up to the solving table when a runner calls you, and the judge will ask you, are you ready? You say you're ready. He lifts the cover. You get 15 seconds of inspection time. This is timed, but not going to show up as part of your actual solving time. And so he will alert you when you've hit 8 seconds and when you've hit 12 seconds. Whenever you're ready, you put your hands on the timer, you wait till the light turns green, and you start, right? You go ahead, you finish your solve. This is not going to be a particularly fast solve. I apologize. Once you're done, you place it down, and you stop the timer by putting your hands like that. You will never, ever see a cuber be as gentle as I just was. You will see them go like this, and they will like slam the thing on the table. I mean, I've had the cube fly off the table. It's quite violent. So, they just slap it down. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. The idea being you want to reduce the amount of time spent in this like transitional period. Yeah. What's up?
Can I show them one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, like, this is like the, okay, so like imagine you time yourself, and then, so
you want to reset it, you can just press this button, and but like these other two buttons are for your best scores. So, for example, you get a really good solve like that or something, and then you can press this button, and then see how it's like time 1, and then what it's gonna be. Like your solve that you just did, and then you can press this button again to do it, and then you can press this play button to like change which one of your best solves was it, and if you change your mind, then you can just click this.
Right. So basically a saving feature for your best time.
Yeah, and if you just want to view them, then you can do this
Yeah,
and press the play button, and yeah.
that's good. Thank you. I never got the handle around using, yeah, let's clap for it. I never got the handle around using the onboard save feature, so I just had everything saved in a spreadsheet. That just worked for me. Okay, what is the next cube? Let's do 3x3. Thank you. All right, one common misconception that a lot of people have about all the cubes really is that we do it side by side. That's not true. And it's pretty easy to see why. If you were to solve 5 sides, then there's nowhere else for the colors of the 6th side to be on the cube. They kind of have to be there because there's everything else to solve. There's no space, right? So it doesn't really work if you do it side by side. It's not really possible unless you do the very common strategy that I'm sure many of you have done of peeling the stickers off and putting it back on. Then you can do it side by side. But the way it's actually done in almost all the methods, all the standard speed solving methods, is layer by layer. So, and I say almost all the standards because there are, like the blindfolded events, you don't do it layer by layer. You kind of do it piece by piece. You do corners first, then edges, or edges first, then corners. But for the standard solving events, you would start off with something we call the cross. Basically, we're solving our white edge pieces like this. And you know a piece is solved because every single color on the piece is touching the corresponding center. So if we take the blue and white edge right here, you can see how the white sticker is touching the white center and the blue sticker is touching the blue center. That indicates a solved piece. For a more advanced method, I'll show you the beginner's method because it's easier to demonstrate what's going on. You would then solve the corners. So I'm going fairly quickly just so I can show you. But now, for example, we have the white, red, and green corner. The red sticker is touching the red center, the green sticker is touching the green center, and the white sticker is touching the white center. Like that, that is true for all of these centers. Next, we go ahead and solve the middle layer. And for the common speed solving method F2L or CFOP, cross F2L, OLL, PLL, you would do the corners and the middle edge at the same time. This is the method that I use, that, bless you, that a lot of speed solvers use. So now you will see that this middle layer edges are solved. So the orange is touching the orange center, blue is touching the blue center, just like that. Now we have a step called orientation of the last layer, where we get everything to be one color. And then we have permutation of the last layer, where we basically use one final algorithm to get all the pieces in their correct position. And all of this happens at the top level in a matter of 5 seconds or so.
Can I try that cube?
Sure. This model is the Yushin Little Magic.
You can use mine if you want to.
Okay, cool.
As a
Thank you.
replacement.
Cool, cool, cool. I might have to because I took apart my other one. So that's all right. I'll put it back together later. Okay, let's do some 4x4 now. Who has got the 4x4? No. 4x4. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, this one I'll try to go through quickly because if I don't speed solve it, it could take me some time. What I'm doing right now is doing the reduction stage. So like Everett showed us on the 13x13, excuse me, he was basically creating centers so that he could reduce it down into a 3x3, which is what I'm trying to do here with the 4x4. You'll see that I've created my centers. One challenge on 4x4 is that if you don't get the centers in the correct spot, it'll become unsolvable. So for example, if I were to switch the position of the red and blue centers like that, suddenly this cube becomes unsolvable and I can demonstrate it with this corner. You can see that if I try to solve this corner, it's physically not possible to be solved because this blue sticker, which I cannot change the position of because it's a fixed corner, is not going to be able to match with its center. And the only way to fix this is if you get your centers in the correct spot. All right. Then for my method, I start to solve my edges before I'm done with my before I'm done with my centers. So right now you can see I'm getting my cross edges done. Then I will take care of the final 2 centers, and now I'm finished with my centers and the white cross. From here, I will try to solve the remaining edges. So that's an additional 3. And that's all the edges solved. From here, we begin to solve the cube like a regular 3x3. So this is like my middle layer edge, this is like my corner. Now this is something we call parity. This is not a case that's possible to achieve on 3x3, where we only have one correctly oriented edge, so I have to use a special algorithm that you would only do on even layer puzzles. I continue my orientation of last layer process to get everything to be yellow, and then I do one final algorithm to finish everything off. So there we go. Thank you. And what I'm showing right now are just the standard speed solving methods. If I were to do 4x4 blindfolded, I would have used a completely different method. I would have solved the centers separately, the corners separately, and the edges separately. Speaking of blindfolded, I'll now do a blindfolded demonstration. So who's got my blindfolded cube? I believe you do, right? Okay, cool. Awesome.
What makes that a blindfold?
Oh, well, it's just a normal cube. It's just a normal cube. I'm just going to use it to do a blind solve. I guess you could also say it doesn't have a logo, so it can be used for blind solving. When I do multi-blind is when you solve many Rubik's Cubes blindfolded, so you memorize multiple, don the blindfold, solve multiple. When I do that, for that purpose, I bought like 30 of the exact same model cube, so that when I'm solving, the changes in cube don't affect my ability to concentrate on what's going on. I've had experiences where before I owned that many cubes of the same model, I've had to use different ones. I would be using a slow cube, the next cube would be a fast one, and I would suddenly mess up just because my hand was used to turning a slow cube, I started turning a fast cube, I overshot a turn, and then I don't know where I am. So yeah.
How many
Cubes can you solve blindfolded without taking the blindfold off?
So if there was no time limit, there's theoretically no limit, but the standard competition limit is 1 hour. That means that you have 1 hour to memorize the cube, and in the same hour, you need to solve the cube. For that standard practice, my at-home record, so like personal best, is 27 out of 27, so 27 points. My in-competition best is 23 out of 23. So, you know, stress of competition. Oftentimes I need to reset the order of cubes after they've been scrambled just because I have a very specific order that I like to be in. That takes a little bit of time, so I generally go a little bit lower than I normally would at home. So it was 23 out of 23 for my best performance, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to kindly request as little noise as possible just so that I can try to memorize it. And once I'm done memorizing it, to prove that I'm doing it without looking, I'm just going to turn around and do it like that. So. Okay, like I said, no promises. If I don't get it, I promise I'll try again at the end of the presentation and try to get a success so that you have at least something cool to take home with you. All right, let's give it a try. I've already forgotten if I did a step. Sorry, okay, restarting. Pressure really changes how accurately one can do this. All right, there we go, success. So, I apologize for the initial blip, but you know, sometimes that happens. But yeah, hopefully you guys found that interesting. Thank you. Yeah.
When you memorize it, are you memorizing the initial position of everything? Are you memorizing kind of your plan of attack on how to go after it based on how it looks? Or yes, both?
It's more of the first one, for sure. The plan of attack is more, I guess the term I'd use is abstraction. It's like I've kind of prepared in advance what I'm going to do in which situation. And I'm kind of, based on the position of the cube that I'm memorizing, it kind of tells me which situation is coming next. And because I've kind of previously memorized and worked with what I do in each situation, I just apply a set of moves, and if all goes well, it should work. So that's basically how I do it. And the memorization is a bit interesting, because when I look at the cube, I'm not memorizing, okay, the red is here, the blue is here. Many people think that's the case. That's not true. What I'm actually doing is figuring out which pieces need to be swapped with which pieces in order to eventually, once all the swaps occur, what will give me a solved result. So when I teach this to my students, I use this demonstration here. So I'll try to do the same here. So let's imagine, and I'll try to go through this quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But let's imagine that these are the pieces of our cube, okay? Now, if I were to scramble this, right, I could do something like this. Now, if I gave you the rule that you are only allowed to solve this by swapping whatever is in this first position with any other piece, this is how you would go about doing that. You would swap the 2 with the 4, you'd swap the 4 with the 3, you'd swap the 3 with the 5, and you'd swap the 5 with the 1. Now, if you notice, what did I actually do? I basically took whatever was in this position and solved it. I just swapped it with where it needed to go, right? Now, I did that. I finished the swap, and then I checked what's the next piece. If you wanted to memorize it, what you would do is you'd think, okay, where does this piece go? It goes right here. Well, you know that once you finish this swap, the 4 is going to end up in this position. And then you would figure out where does the 4 want to go. So instead of actually doing the move, I can just track that. I can say, okay, I'm going to swap the 2 with the 4, 4 is going to be there. I'm going to swap the 4 with the 3, 3 is going to be there. I'm going to swap the 3 with the 5, 5 is going to be there. I'm going to swap the 5 with the 1. So now I've just memorized the exact order of the swaps that I need to do in order to solve this. Then it doesn't matter if my eyes are closed, I know what to do. That's basically what's going on when I solve the cube. I'm memorizing, okay, this piece needs to go here, this piece needs to go here, this piece needs to go here. And the swap is a set of algorithms that I've previously memorized and practiced. And so just like how I can close my eyes, tell you I need to swap the 2 with the 4, 4 with 3, 3 with 5, 5 with 1, I can do the same thing on the cube. And it's just a little more that I need to memorize in terms of algorithms. So quite a bit easier than people actually make it out to be. Yeah.
Can we go here?
Oh, yes, yes, Mike is over here, yeah.
I'm assuming there's like a maximum amount of scrambledness for any given cube. Like you can't, once you get it, you can't make it more scrambled than some limit. But I'm curious how they apply it in competition, you know, randomly, evenly, fairly, so that everyone starts from the same, you know,
from the same
disadvantage.
Yeah, that's a good disadvantage. That's true. That's a good question. I will actually show something that you might find interesting. So you did mention how there's like a maximum scrambled position. If I remember correctly, there is a specific maximum scrambled orientation, and it's this position right here. This is called the superflip orientation, and I believe this is considered the most scrambled because I don't think this can be solved in less than 20 moves. It has to be solved in 20 moves. So just for the first part of the question, I believe, and I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, but I believe this is considered the most scrambled orientation. Now, for how competitions are able to standardize the scramble, basically they have a computer program called T-Noodle, and it generates a set of scrambles for you. And I would show it on a website, but I don't have it a device. But basically, it generates like a picture of a scramble, and it gives you notation. So It basically tells you do right side up, left side down, bottom side to the right, but in a more standardized notation. And if you apply that scrambling algorithm, you will get the picture. And you have basically 2 or 3 scramblers at a scrambling table, and when everybody submits their cube, they say, okay, they look at the scorecard and say, okay, this person has done 1 solve, they need their second solve, so I'm going to do the second scramble on this sheet. They do that, and then if all goes well, you have everyone getting the same scramble. Now, sometimes human error happens. I was once at a competition where actually that former Square One world record holder, Derpy-Cuber, Daniel Karnock, he used the wrong scrambles from a different round on the current round, the round that I was in, and I broke my in-competition average best, and they announced we have to redo the round because there was a scrambling error, and then I got a slower time. So you can imagine that I was quite irritated. But it happens, because also these competitions are run fully by volunteers. When you sign up to compete, you have to pay an entrance fee to help them cover the venue charge, and then you are expected to help out either by being a judge, meaning you are the person who's sitting there timing the inspection time. You're a scrambler, meaning you're the one scrambling the cubes. You're doing data entry, meaning you're taking people's results and inputting them into the digital database. Or you're running, which means you're taking people from the competitor waiting area to the actual solving area. I've done 3 out of the 4 of those jobs. Data entry is usually reserved for one of the competition organizers because it has to be more formally done. But I've done the other 3, and all competitors are expected to do some form of help. So. Yes, and if you are officially on staff, I mean, at local competitions and things like the Michigan does a lot in Plymouth. At local competitions like that, you don't get compensated for your helping, you're just expected to help. But back in 2022, I was competing at the New York Championship, and I was officially on staff there. So our benefit was like we got our registration fee waived, which was helpful. And we got like free shirts and things. That was nice. Yeah.
When you're blindfolded and you finish, how do you know you're done?
I'm basically tracking the number of swaps. Sorry, the question was, how do I know I'm done when I finish a blind solve? And just like this, right, there's a finite number of swaps that you need to solve this, right? So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I memorized this before. So if I were to finish those 4 swaps, I know that's solved. I don't need to look at it. I know that I finished all the swaps that I need to solve that set of cards. On cubing, it's the same way. When I did that solve, I knew that for corners, I'm going to have 7 swaps, and for edges, I didn't track the number, but it was probably something like 13 swaps or something like that. So I know once I finish my 13 swaps for edges and 7 swaps for corners, then I'm done. And unless I memorized incorrectly, or I did an extra swap or something like that, then it should be solved.
So you're counting as you're flipping.
Basically, it's not exactly that I'm counting. It's basically the way the memorization works. The number of swaps is tracked by letters. I basically decode or encode every sticker on the cube with a letter. And that works because corners and edges cannot be put into each other's positions, so you can reuse the alphabet. There's 8 corners on the cube, 3 colors on each corner, so you have 24 possible corner stickers. There's 12 edges on the cube, 2 stickers on each edge, so 24 possible edge stickers. 26 letters, so obviously there's enough to encode all the information because edges and corners cannot be put into each other's positions. I use those letters for each corner to track, okay, A needs to go to P, P needs to go to C, whatever, keeps going. Once I have my string of letters, I encode that into a story. So for example, A, P, W, M, let's just take those 4 letters. A, P, apple, W, M, worm. So you memorize an apple with a worm coming out of it. And this story can get pretty absurd, but the idea is basically you have something that you can visualize that you can then extract letters from, which tells you the order of the swaps that you need to accomplish. And once this story is done, like once that final image is in my head, that basically tells me, okay, all the swaps are done, you should be done. And that's how it's done. So yeah, it's quite interesting stuff, yeah.
Most people do the same method?
That method is pretty much standardized across everything. The actual blind solving method that people use is very different. I use what can be considered an intermediate method, and I've gotten pretty good with it. I mean, I've had world-class solvers tell me that, I've never seen someone as fast with the method that you use. You meaning me. But the top solvers in the world use a different method, so basically, the swapping method, so like this, right? The algorithm that I use to do that on the cube swaps 2 pieces at once. So it solves 1 piece, right? The most advanced method, which I at one point did know, at least half of it, but because I didn't practice it, I kind of forgot it, just because of school and everything. The top method that top blind solvers use, it's got 800 algorithms. At one point, I knew 400 of them. It cycles 3 pieces at once. So it solves 2 pieces. And that effectively cuts the time in half, because instead of solving 1 piece at a time, you're solving 2 pieces at a time. So in that sense, the method is different, but the way they're memorizing is the same. Yeah. And that actually can be used in a variety of situations. I once, in sophomore year of high school, had a chemistry exam, and parents, you might appreciate this, how cubing helps kids get good grades. I had a chemistry exam where we had to recall information from the periodic table. And you can imagine, periodic table, it's just a bunch of letters. So what better way to do it than use a cubing memorization scheme? And so, I basically decoded all the letters into the actual names of the elements, created a story, recalled the information, and surprise, surprise, I got 100 on the exam. So it worked pretty well in that sense. And it's not just for, chemistry and things like that. Actual memory champions use this technique called the memory palace, of basically taking images that represent whatever you're trying to memorize and putting it in a spatial place. They use that technique to memorize vast quantities of information. So it can be used for many different purposes.
We've got time for another question, and then I think Abner's going to stick around if you want to chat with him.
Yeah, sure. He's got a couple more slides, but I understand the tech guy's got to go, so yeah.
So blindfold solving, how often in the competition can you look at it? I know you said 1 hour for memorizing.
Yeah.
But like, what happens while you're solving and you're like, oh, I completely blanked out a solve? Like, is that attempt gone?
Yes, it is. It is. So the question was, what happens if you suddenly forget you need to check? So like what I just did, right? When I was like, shoot, let me just check, and then that's not allowed. I only did that, because I am under a bit of pressure here, and it's not a competition setting, so I can. Hopefully you'll trust me that it's fine. But yes, in an actual competition, if it's a single cube solve, meaning just 1 cube, like what I just did, if you can't remember something, you've got 2 options. You can either try to deduce what comes next, which I've done. This sounds a bit like, but I have become quite good at it, just because it's happened so many times that I've had to kind of develop strategies. One competition I was in, this is actually the solve that gave me my semi-official world record. I was solving 5x5 blindfolded. That's this one. And I was solving for about, I don't know, maybe, I'd memorized, and I was doing like about 4 minutes of actual execution. And I realized that 4 minutes ago, I made a mistake. And so I undid 4 minutes of work, fixed the mistake, redid those 4 minutes, completed the solve, and somehow the cube was solved when I was done. So your 2 options are either try to somehow figure out what the mistake was. You can use your story to help you. So for example, for a standard memorization, each piece is somehow encoded in a letter. So if you're going through your memorization and you can't remember a single letter, but if you remember the other 11 or 10, whatever it is, you can figure out, okay, well, what's the piece I'm missing? And then from there, you can say, okay, I've got to do this, So there are ways to figure out if you forget something, but if it's so far gone that you just cannot deduce it in any way, you basically have to just quit the cube. And in multi-blind, this happens often because there's so many more cubes that you need to memorize. What I'll often do is if I can't memorize something, or if I can't remember something, I'll put the cube off to the side, do my other cubes, and if I have time at the end, I'll come back to it. And then I'll try again. But yeah. It has happened so many times that I've seen people, for single cubes, you have a cumulative time limit of 10 minutes, which means you have 3 solves. All 3 solves added together need to be under 10 minutes. I've seen people take 9 minutes to memorize. On the blindfold, they do 2 moves or something, and once you do a move, you cannot look. If you don't do a move, you can look, but if you do a move, can't look. They do like 5 moves, and then they just stop the attempt, because they can't remember what comes after that. And those people are usually the ones who just learn blindfolded, and it's like their first time competing, and so. But yes, unfortunately, if you can't deduce it, it's, you just have to stop. Yeah. Okay, are any of my cubes still out in the audience? I think one of them is, right? Okay, cool. Awesome. So, I'll just kind of continue through the slides here, and I understand that. Thank you guys so much for your help. But but we'll basically go through here. So this is now the people part of the From Puzzles to People. We've done enough puzzles, time for some people. So cubing competitions. Has anyone, I may have asked this already, has anyone competed before? No. Okay, so you should get a kick out of this then. Now, World Cube Association, as I mentioned, is the organization that runs all these competitions. Oh, I'm not showing my slides. Okay, World Cube Association is the organization that runs all these competitions. Sorry? Oh yes, your cube. I'm so sorry. There you go. And in recent years, the number of competitions has grown immensely. It's almost pretty much doubled from the time when I started. And there's basically 5 levels to these competitions. You've got the local competitions, which is like Michigan Mini 39, which is a series of competitions that happens here in Michigan in Plymouth, so like 25, 30 minutes away. That's like your local. So you're not really winning any championships there. It's mostly for fun. The staff is all volunteers. There's usually only a few events. It's just a day thing. Those are your local competitions. However, those are often the most fun because it's such a tight-knit community that you often go to these different local competitions and you see the same faces over and over again. I've connected with several people that way. Like I said, I'm from New Jersey, and the tri-state area historically has probably been one of the world's most concentrated area of world-class cubers. I do not consider myself in that category, but I've seen several people in that category. And I would see them at all these different competitions, and so I became quite friendly with them, which was quite an honor. State level competitions, these are where you get your state championship. So I mentioned New Jersey championship, New York championship. I think Michigan championship has either already happened or is happening later this month. That's in Port Huron. This is kind of the first order of where you can be named champion or win or get a record or something like that. Records can be set at any competition, but championships need to be won at the specific championship. So state championships, nowadays, they're often 2 or 3 days. They've got most of the events, if not all of the events. And you kind of know who's going to win just because the heavy hitters from all the local competitions, they go to the state championships and then they usually win the top events. Regional, we're talking about like Mid-Atlantic championships, Heartland championships, Southwest championships. Basically, I think there's like 7 regions or something like that. Each one will have a competition, 3 or 4 days, almost all the events, if not all the events. And in order to be considered the champion of that region, oh, here's another thing. If you're doing a state championship, in order to actually be considered champion of that state, you need to be from that state, and you need to show evidence that you're from that state. At the New York Championships, I won multi-blind. I placed first, got the gold medal, but I was not considered the New York champion because I was from New Jersey. I wasn't from New York. The person who got 3rd place was considered the New York champion because he was from New York. 2nd place was a guy from Pennsylvania. But actually, for 5x5 blindfolded, nobody from New York got a success because 5x5 blindfolded is fairly difficult. So I was 2nd place, the Pennsylvania guy was 1st place, so he ended up getting the trophy for it since no one from New York got it. So same for regional. I'm from New Jersey, so I cannot be considered for Heartland Championship, but I can be considered for Mid-Atlantic Championship. National, you basically just have to show that you live in the US. That happens now every 2 years. We've started, so it used to be every year. I've gone to 2017, 2018, and 2019. Now what's happening more recently is we've got national championships 1 year, and then the following year we have North American Championship. And that brings me to my next point, which is international. International championships are usually continental championships and world championships. World championships happen every 2 years. We had Seattle last year, so it was in the US last year. 2 years before that, I think it might have been in Paris or something like that. But yeah, so world championships happen every 2 years, and continental championships, I believe, is either every 2 years or every year. The events, these are kind of what I already showed: 2x2, 3x3, 4x4, 5x5, 6x6, 7x7, Skew, Pyraminx, Ground 1, Clock, Megaminx. I already showed those cubes, and then at the end are modifications of the previous events. So 3x3 OH is 3x3 one-handed, literally the same as 3x3, but now you don't have, so you're just turning it with one hand like this. 3x3 FMC, this is what I discussed before, fewest moves challenge. It's not a speed solving event, it's more of a theoretical event where you have to figure out the best possible solution in terms of move count. Some mathematicians would probably like that event. 3 blind, or BLD blind. 3 blind refers to a single 3x3 blindfolded. 4 blind refers to a single 4x4 blindfolded. 5 blind refers to a single 5x5 blindfolded. And MBLD, multi-blind, refers to multiple 3x3s solved blindfolded. And purpose. One of the amazing things, there are many amazing things about cubing competitions, but one of the most amazing things is that for the most part, especially at local competitions, people are completely unbothered with the results. Nobody actually goes there thinking, okay, I want to win this event, I want to get this podium, I want to get this record, whatever. They are going there because they want to go see their friends, they want to make new friends, and they want to discuss and experience cubing with other cubers who love it just as much as they do. Kind of like what we're doing right now, right? I once heard it described as basically just a party with rankings that nobody really cares about. You know, it's like it's one of the only social situations where you leave with a definitive order of, oh, I did better than you. But like I said, nobody really cares about that. It's only at the national championship, world championship level where that's even considered. And even then, the primary experience is about experiencing it all together. You know, the rankings are there because it is a competition, but if you ask anybody, the primary focus is always on connection with others. So that's what I emphasize the most when I tell my students about going and competing, and that's what the biggest takeaway is for almost everybody who competes. So, and on that note, people often think, oh, I need to be this fast before I go and compete. That's not true at all. You can go and compete at any speed, no matter how old or young you are. I mean, the current world record holder, I think he's like 7 years old or something like that. When I was starting, the top cubers in the world were in their late teens, early 20s. I've also seen videos of like 80-year-olds going and competing. It was funny. There's a cuber from Pennsylvania called Olivia Kleiner, one of the top pyramid solvers like ever. And the funny thing was that her dad would also compete with her in 2x2 and pyramid at all these competitions. And it would be funny looking at the rankings because Olivia Kleiner would be first place and her dad would be last place. So they kind of just sandwiched everybody in between. But it's a beautiful thing, you know, because parents and all your parents who said you wanted to learn, you can go learn and you can go compete with your kids. So my dad also even signed up for a competition once. He didn't end up competing, but he did sign up. So. And a discussion of what goes on at one. So I kind of briefly got into it before, but basically you do bring your own cubes once you sign up. You go in, once they call your group, you go give your cube, you sit in the competitor waiting area, someone scrambles it, you get called up to compete, you do your 5 solves, they write down your times, and if you do well enough to get into the next round, you get into the next round, process continues until you eventually have a set of 3 winners for the event. I had a question over here? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you ever solved a ghost cube blindfolded?
I have not. It is on my list. My next goal for blind solving would probably be to solve 6x6 blindfolded, which is not an official event, but it is something I'm interested in doing just because I want to see how high I can take it. But I'll add it to the list. Ghost cube blindfolded. We'll see if I can do it. We need to wrap up. Okay, I'll go through these fairly quickly. Okay, so cubing in the outside world, there's several benefits to it, obviously. Social skills I already talked about. You're connecting with people of all different ages, demographics, cultures, ethnicities, especially at the international stage. So it's a beautiful thing to make new friends. And analytical skills, of course, you know, it's all pattern recognition, basically. Problem solving, there's a lot of, especially in the events like FMC, where the whole goal is to figure out the optimal solution, and memory enhancement. I've personally felt my memory improve, even if I'm not doing a technique for memory. Just, you know, it does help you quite a bit. And you also, and this is true with getting good at anything, you do learn how to improve at anything in an efficient and effective manner. Learning how to practice, learning how to approach learning, it's helpful for almost anything. Just some basic practice tips here. Practice daily. Practice in a competition simulated environment. So use like the timer we showed before. That's good. Analyze your solves if you can. Record, figure out what's going wrong, what could be done better. And of course, focus, no distractions while practicing. This is not to say, like I used to practice with podcast, a cubing podcast when I would practice. Although that's not really true practice. True practice is when you're analyzing what you're doing and figuring out how can I get better. If you're distracted, it's more just solving for fun, which is also completely fine, and I highly encourage it. But when you're trying to get better, always good to really focus in on what you're doing and analyze and figure out what's going wrong, which is true for anything. Learning resources. So number one, obviously, I've put myself. It is true for anything that the best way to improve is if you get a specialized coach to help you specifically with your goals one-on-one. So like I said before, if any of you are interested in this, I do have a QR code at the very end for my contact me page on my website, and I have a couple of flyers over here which you can pick up on your way out. 2 is YouTube. There's such a wealth of information there, and even though you cannot interact with the presenter directly, you can usually research enough YouTube videos to kind of help you on your journey. Websites, if you want some, come up to me after the presentation. I can give you some great ones for learning algorithms, timers, competitions, whatever. And pamphlets. Oftentimes, when you buy a cube, it'll come with a set of algorithms that'll help you solve it. And for companies like GAN, Moyu, Chi, they're usually pretty good. They give a good set of algorithms that are all quite good. Right, so yeah, Q&A now, so I don't know if we have time to stay in here, but yeah.
If you want to hang out and chat with Abner, that'd be great, but please join me in thanking him for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a good time. So yeah, I'll be here for another couple of minutes while I'm packing up, so if you want to talk about solving, classes, competitions, whatever, I'm free to talk. So.